What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back inside the UC Health Training Center for today's edition of Broncos Now. Team reporter and host Sydney Jones here. And coming up on today's episode, we'll hear from head coach Nathaniel Hackett as he spoke to the media for the final time this week. I'll also have the final injury report of the week, and Aric DiLalla joins the show later on for a game preview. All that and more coming up. Just 2 more days now until the Denver Broncos host the San Francisco 49ers at Empower Field at Mile High on Sunday Night Football. The 49ers are 1-1 so far this season and are coming off their first win at home. Head coach Nathaniel Hackett spoke on playing them in primetime this Sunday and the challenge that comes with playing one of the better teams in the league.
You want to play the best teams all the time to always continually push yourself. And, if you want to be successful in this league, you're going to have to beat the best in the league. So it definitely gives you kind of a gauge on where you are, how the guys compete, how they respond, especially in prime time. Because, if you get to that next step, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think it's a great learning experience and a great opportunity for everybody.
Coach Hackett also discussed 49ers defensive end Nick Bosa and tight end George Kittle and the threat they pose on Sunday.
Bosa, he's obviously a very good football player. His motor is unbelievable. You could put all kinds of people on him, and he's still going to fight through everything. So, again, you just have to slow those guys down. You have to make them think. You have to make sure that they know they just can't tee off on one guy. So we'll do everything we can to be able to help that out. And you said Kittle too, right? Yeah. Kittle's he's a beast, and this will be his first game back if he's back. And, he's one of those guys, you got to understand, he's going to get his catches. It's about the run after the catch. We got to make sure that we tackle really well on him.
We've heard all week about how Coach Hackett is working to improve game management and game operations. He talked about it again today, and he feels like he's always growing and getting better.
It's a growing process. We're all together for the first time, and Russell's been in one place for a long time, and now he's with us, and we're working through it with him. He's working through it with the guys on the field and all of us, and I think it's a growing process for all of us, and we're going to continue. You always have to have that because you always want to keep the defense off their rhythm. So it's just something we got to keep getting used to.
And as we wrap up the top news of the day, take a look at this week's final injury report. Coach Hackett updated us on a few guys. Cornerback Darius Phillips is out for Sunday's game, while guard Quinn Miners, cornerback Pat Surtain, wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver KJ Hamler, inside linebacker Josie Jewell, offensive lineman Billy Turner, wide receiver Tyree Cleveland, outside linebacker Jonathan Cooper, defensive end Draymond Jones, and defensive lineman Mike Purcell are all questionable for the game. He gave an update on Jerry Jeudy and said he's doing a really good job and doing everything he can. He really wants to be out there, but they're taking it day by day with him. Now joining me here in the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla. Aric, second primetime game of the season here for the Broncos.
Yeah, the Broncos are pretty popular right now, it seems like.
All right, should be a fun one on Sunday night. Let's discuss what to watch for versus the 49ers. We've heard all week about some of the corrections, some of the adjustments that this team is going to be making in terms of game management, penalties, executing in the red zone. Aric, what improvements do you really hope to see in some of those areas on Sunday?
Yeah, I think one, you mentioned the penalties there. The Broncos have to be a lot cleaner, and I know we mentioned that last week, but some of the things that I think you were able to get away with against the Texans, like the delay of game penalty that pushes you out of field goal range and you lose 3 points there, I don't think you're going to be able to do that and get away with it against the 49ers. So you have to be cleaner, both in kind of an execution standpoint. Some of those penalties are getting up to the line of scrimmage, getting it snapped fast enough, being set at the snap, being in the right place, all of those sorts of things. You've got to clean that up. And then there's some penalties that are, offensive holding, defensive holding. You've just got to be a little bit cleaner in your technique. And so both of those things need to improve. I think if the Broncos have 10-plus penalties again, they're going to struggle to keep up with the 49ers in this game. So that's got to be better. And then they've just got to take advantage of opportunities. So if there is a 4th and 1, you've got to be ready to go for it if that's what you want to do, and you got to be able to convert it. If you're in the red zone where the Broncos have been 0 for 6, you've got to have more success because against this defense that's really good, Sydney, currently number 1 in the league in total defense, number 3 in scoring defense, you might only get 3 opportunities down in the red zone. You've got to make them count because I don't think this is going to be a game where you've got 6 red zone trips. You've got 5 red zone trips. So you're going to really have to make the most of every opportunity. And both from a penalty standpoint and being efficient in the red zone and with your decision-making, the Broncos have to be better there.
For sure. Yeah, we've heard Coach Hackett say numerous times this week just how they're fixing and fine-tuning some of those issues when it comes to decision-making, when it comes to getting, that the plays to Russell Wilson in a timely manner. What have you heard from him that, makes you optimistic about this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think they just, maybe after week one, you thought, okay, well, this is on the road. There's a lot of crowd noise. Things are going to be fine at home. And so maybe you don't take quite the look at it that you needed to. I think this week it sounded like all of Monday they worked on that. Certainly as the week goes on, you continue to work on those processes. And so I do think that, again, and it's just another week, so it should be more reps, more of an opportunity for Nathaniel Hackett to kind of get in Russell Wilson's ear, make sure that you've got all these things down pat and that you're on the same page. And I would expect them to be ready to go. I wouldn't expect a third game in a row where you have these sorts of issues.
For sure. Well, the defense, they've put up a dominant performance, held the Texans to just 3 field goals last week, haven't allowed a touchdown in 6 quarters, I believe. How do you think they'll fare going up against, this 49ers offense that has Jimmy G, Deebo Samuel, and now George Kittle? He'll be in.
Yeah, George Kittle throws a little wrench in there just because he's a really, really good player at the tight end position, blocks really well, obviously can catch down the field. He's hurt the Broncos before. Back in 2018, he had a huge performance. So the Broncos know what they're up against there. I do think that there's a chance that people maybe are underrating what the Broncos defense can do against the 49ers. I mean, don't get me wrong, Jimmy G's a really good quarterback. Deebo Samuel's a unique weapon, and I just spoke about what Kittle can do, but this is a good Broncos defense too, and DJ Jones is a really good run stopper. Sounds like potentially the Broncos could get Josie Jewell back. He was limited all week. He'll be questionable for the game, but I would think that he'd play. It sounds like Pat Surtain, after being a full participant on Friday, is trending toward playing. So you've got some playmakers back there in your defense. And if you can shut this run game down a little bit, slow it down maybe is a better way to put it, and force Jimmy G to throw the football, I do like the Broncos' chances of at least limiting the 49ers offense. And in my mind, if you can keep the 49ers to 20, 21 points, kind of in that range, the low 20s, I do think you'll be in a position where you can win this football game.
You mentioned Josie Jewell and Pat Surtain. The Broncos were definitely hit with the injury bug this week. We had 10 guys that were reported as questionable for Sunday's game, Aric. I showed the final injury report earlier in the show, but, when you got Jerry Jeudy and you mentioned Pat Surtain, Draymond Jones, Josie Jewell, guys like that who are questionable, how do you think it's really going to affect this team come Sunday?
Yeah, I know it doesn't look good to see 10 guys.
Scary.
It does, to see 10 guys who are questionable, 16 guys total on the injury report.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as it looks. I mean, Jerry Jeudy returned to practice. I do think he'll truly be a questionable guy, but Pat Surtain improved to a full participant. KJ Hamler improved to a full participant. DJ Jones, who wasn't given a game status, improved to a full participant. Those things all kind of suggest that those guys should be ready to go. We heard from Jerry Jeudy on Friday in the locker room. He made it sound like he is going to be ready to play and wants to be out there to play.
Yeah.
And then you hope a guy like Draymond Jones, who did not practice on Friday and was added to the injury report with a neck injury, he went through the stretching period. He looked okay, was kind of running around a little bit. I wonder if they're just giving him a little bit of rest, kind of making sure that he's good to go. Yeah. I would guess when we get to Sunday night that more of those guys than not are going to be available to play. Tyree Cleveland, to me, and Jonathan Cooper, 2 guys who did not practice on Friday with hamstring injuries. We didn't even see them out there. Yeah. Those guys, to me, I would worry a little bit more about. Obviously, we'll have to see. Questionable is supposed to mean 50-50, but just because there's 10 guys on the injury report doesn't mean that the Broncos are going to be without all these guys, and I really think a lot of their key players will play this weekend.
Well, that sounds like good news. Just a couple more here for you, Aric. What do you think a win would really mean for this team this weekend? Like we've talked about, going up against a really tough 49ers team. Think it could, spark a nice run for this team?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't think that this is necessarily like a must-win game by any mean for the Broncos. This is a really tough opponent. They made the NFC Championship game last year. They went to a Super Bowl not too long ago. It's a really good opponent with a quarterback that has a lot of experience in the system, knows what he's doing with these playmakers. And so this is a tough opponent. But if you do win, I think it shows you, hey, we can compete with these teams in the upper echelon of the NFL. Yeah. Maybe that gives, obviously it'll give fans some confidence, but maybe inside the locker room too, it shows some of these guys that haven't been, a part of winning teams a lot before. Maybe they say, okay, hey, we can do this. We can make a little run here. And obviously going to Las Vegas next week isn't going to be easy, but I do think it's a winnable game for the Broncos. You got the Colts at home on Thursday Night Football. So yeah, I do think if you win this weekend, one, it might show you that things are starting to click from an offensive standpoint. I think the defense, it would show that they're up for the test against a really good offense, or certainly one that can run the ball and do what they want to do really well. And it could, like you said, it could spark a run that kind of gets this team going a little bit. And maybe instead of all the negative press that we've had over the last week about the Broncos aren't quite what we expected to see, maybe the conversation changes to, hey, this team's pretty good.
I hope you're right. Well, last one here for you. You got a game prediction?
Yeah, there's so many reasons I think where you could lean toward the 49ers in terms of the experience that I mentioned. Jimmy G being a really solid quarterback. This defense is really, really good and challenges you at all different levels. But I do think being at home is really helpful. We haven't quite seen a vintage Russell Wilson game yet, and he plays really well against the 49ers. We've heard the stat all week, 16-4 in the regular season, the most touchdown passes. He plays well against these guys. He knows what he's doing. I think the Broncos kind of silence some of the doubters for now, get a close win at home, could be back and forth, but I'll say 24-23 Broncos. I think they find a way to get it done, and it should be a really fun one.
I love it. I think it'll be a fun one, too. I have the Broncos winning as well. And they're going to be in their blue uniforms this weekend. Excited to see that, too.
Yeah, those are great.
They're awesome. All right, Aric, appreciate your time and your insight. I'll see you on Sunday.
You got it, Sid.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in today and every day. I hope to see you out in Power Field at Mile High this Sunday. Make sure to stop by and say hi if you guys see me. But if not, I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube on Monday following the game. Have a great weekend.